I pretty much knew straight away what had happened. If you look at the action of the blade in the video right at this point here, you can see it's obviously spinning out of round. And yeah, knowing that my blade is fitted to the saw with a bushing, then yeah, it was pretty obvious that somehow that bushing had come out of the center of the blade and caused the blade to spin like you saw. If we take a look at the flange that's used on this saw for fixing the blade in place, you'll notice that it's got a definite recess on the inside. Now I can understand why that recess is there. In my mind, it's just to make sure that you get a positive compression around the outside of that flange to mount the blade. But the depth of that recess is actually slightly bigger than the thickness of the bushing, which means that bushing can actually work its way loose and sit inside that, completely inside that flange. If I put a straight edge along that, you'll see it sits in there. And that's actually what's happened. The bushing I have for this saw blade, it's basically just a cheap one. It comes out of a pack of multi-sized bushings, just one that you buy from our local big chain hardware store here. And although it sits inside the blade without any play at all, it's not a tight fit. And if I lift the blade up, it just falls through. So you can understand why that could have worked its way loose into the recess of the flange and left that blade unsupported in the center. So what I want to do is somehow pack out this recess here on this flange and also the flange that's mounted in the saw, so that this bushing can't actually work its way sideways. Now, one of my subscribers who has the same saw mentioned that he put 3 of these together and that worked for him. Now, I don't have 3 of these, I only have the 2, and I do want to get this done now. And being over the Christmas New Year period, the shops aren't open anyway. So what I'm going to do is, looking around my workshop, I do have quite a few of these lying around. I've got an assortment of these red fibre washers. I've had them for years and years and years. I don't know, every now and then they do come in handy. And I just happen to have some in the exact same size as the bushing. You wouldn't believe it. They are the exact same size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pack 2 either side of that bushing. Now if I give that a measure with my verniers, that whole thing is just over 4 millimeters thick. I mean, as accurate as I can see, maybe 4.1, 4.2 millimeters thick. If you look at the body of this blade, this particular blade, the body itself is 2 millimeters thick, plus the 1.5 millimeters inside these recesses. That gives me a 5 mil width to play with overall. So this will fit just perfectly. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, like I said, I'm going to put 2 of these on this side, 2 on the other side. That'll still allow the flange to come together and put maximum pressure on the blade, and it'll stop that bushing being able to move sideways. I've just stuck those 2 washers together with a little bit of spray adhesive just to keep them in place, basically. That's all that's for. Okay, so if we have a quick look there with those 2 washers behind that bushing, you can see it's now sitting right in the center of the blade, which is what we want. Okay, so I've got those other 2 washers in place now. Fit the flange and just put the nut on now. Well, I've got that all back together again now, and the blade seems to be running nice and true. Just leaves me with one last thing to do, and that's to make myself a new zero clearance insert. My hands were completely covered by the piece of timber that I was cutting. You saw the size of that timber. If I was cutting a thinner piece of timber where the top of the blade was exposed, I'm just imagining that I would have actually been able to see something going wrong before it actually happened. Because the blade was hidden in that block, I couldn't tell that something was going wrong until I felt it was just something wasn't right. I could just feel that something wasn't right, and that's why I sort of prepared for something to happen.